Hello everyone, welcome back to This Is Why We Stand on Westchester Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Archino, and we are honored to be here once again at the Family Services of Westchester Center for All Ages, our favorite place to be, and what a way to kick off the first show of 2020. I am, again, your host, Jersey Joe Archino, and of course, we are produced by Shark Creative and made possible by Entergy Indian Point Energy Center, Hightower, Westchester, White Plains Hospital, Westchester County Office of Economic Development, Robison, and Accorda Therapeutics. Very, very excited to have our first guest of 2020 be my friend, Dr. Richard Robitaille, 30-year-plus Army veteran, and him and I had the pleasure of covering Army football at West Point this season. Rich, I know you have a little hike to get down here, so I'm so happy to have you here, but thank you for being a part of our first show of 2020.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you being here.
No, of course. Now, you were on the field for Army-Navy this season. Of course, you being a big Army guy, the game didn't go your way, but what was it like being on the field, covering the game? What was that experience like?
Well, it's an experience like no other. It was not very pleasant for me to stand there and watch the Navy quarterback run for 305 yards against us. Malcolm Perry and he recently announced he's going into the Marine Corps upon his graduation. So the good thing about that is we won't have to play him next year because he will be a Marine officer and he won't be playing against Army. So, but other than that, it was a great experience. I call it's one of those bucket list items you have to do. Army versus Navy is itself an unreal experience. You have 60 to 68,000 people were in the stadium. You have the entire sea of cadets and midshipmen that are there because each school brings their entire student body. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Then you have all the alumni from each school, and then you have all the public, people who aren't even affiliated with the Army and Navy, but they want to go see what's called America's Game. And you really have to get there 3 hours before the start of the game because that's when the pregame really begins. You have the march on of each corps, which is amazing. It takes 30 minutes for Navy to march onto the field, and then Army comes and marches out on the field, and they all give a salute to the American public. Most people don't realize that. It's quite amazing. Then you have warm-ups, and then you have the flyovers, the parachute drops. The pregame is really where it's all at. And then when they do the national anthem, both schools send their choirs into a mixed group, and they sing it. And you've never heard the national anthem sung like when it's done by Army and Navy together. It's quite a thing. And then each student body taunts the other through the whole game. They have chants that insult the other one. They steal each other's hats, and they're college kids when you know. But it's a great thing. The game, normally it's very close. Normally, even if one team's having a bad year, that game is very different. It doesn't matter. It's very close. This year wasn't the case because Navy quarterback had the career game of his life against Army, and one of our quarterbacks he was still hurt from coming out of the Michigan game. So, but we took 3 in a row, and you can't win them all, so we'll be back next year, and I'm really looking forward to it. If you've never been to Army-Navy, go to Army-Navy. It's an unreal experience. And when the game's over, everybody shakes hands and goes back to being friends. It's quite an experience.
Army's head coach, Jeff Monken, said he thinks it's the greatest rivalry in sports, and I agree full-heartedly. I mean, to see it in person like you did, I'm sure, is on another level, but even just seeing it on TV is pretty special, too. But I'm sure for you, being, again, 30-plus year Army veteran, that had to mean a lot. But take us kind of through your experience, entering the service. What was your motivation for doing that?
I enlisted in the Army Infantry Airborne when I was 17 years old. I didn't want to go to college when I came out of high school, so my father was an Air Force veteran. He served in Vietnam from 67 to 68. I have countless uncles that have served in the Navy, the Army. My grandfather was in the Army in World War II. So I had a choice. Back then it was, when you graduate from high school, you either go to college, you get a job, or go in the military. So I joined the Army, and because I wanted to get out of New Jersey and go see the world. So that's what I wanted to do. And I was a high school wrestler, and our Army recruiter attended every single match we had. I think he was the greatest recruiter in the world because he got 10 of the starting wrestlers to join the Army.
Those are some good results.
So
wow.
I think he was recruiter of the quarter that year. So that's why I went in. I went to the Fort Benning School for Boys, went into the infantry, went to airborne school, And then I started my active duty career, which lasted for decades.
Yeah, it really is. The first time I met you, when our mutual friend Ken Kreitzer told me 30 plus years, I was holy cow, that's quite a career in the Army. What does it mean to you to have such a long legacy in our such an amazing institution in the United States Army?
Well, it's, now I work in the veterans world, and I work with veterans programs and a lot of nonprofit groups that help veterans. It's when you go into the military, especially our generation, it's about selfless service. I just wanted to go serve. I just wanted to see the world. I wanted to go represent our country, and I was in 13 countries in 30 years. So I served overseas on deployments with the 1st Armored Division in Iraq, and then with the 28th Infantry Division in Kosovo in the Balkans. And so you really got to see a lot. It really makes you appreciate America more. Every time I came home from overseas, I was ecstatic to be back home, because people don't realize how the rest of the world operates and lives. America is a very special place. And so it was always about the selfless service. Just, there's a saying that the honor is to serve. I used to have I retired as a first sergeant, but I had a first sergeant when I was a younger sergeant long ago. He said, we defend democracy, we don't practice it. So we take our orders, we go forth and we serve as best we can with honor. We take care of each other, and then we come home. And that's what it's all about. And the Army is, and all the branches, everyone, I think a lot of civilians don't understand that the service and the military stays with you up until you die, even if you get out. Upon the death of a veteran, whether anybody's there or not, their service branch will be there. They will put a flag, and they will present a flag. The very last thing the military does is thank the family of a service member upon their death, no matter how many years before they got out. And that's very telling if you think about it, how you can serve, whether one tour duty, 20 years or 30 years, but on the day you die, the military is going to be there and thank your family for that service. That's very meaningful. And for a lot of people, that means everything to have that flag. And a lot of people I know have flags in their house of uncles, fathers, mothers that were handed to them by some military officer. So that's very important, that respect that the country gives back after you give your selfless service and, with honor.
And that's why on the show we have a saying, duty goes both ways. Like when people like you go overseas and defend our country, when you come home, it's our job to take care of you. And that's why I think it's one of the motivations for this show, and why it means so very much to have people on this program to kind of share your story and everything. But, for me and for you, I think obviously hearing the stories of some of those deployments and everything you went through, it's not an easy thing. In this room, we've got some people who've been on the show before, taking us through their stories of their deployments, being away from your family and some of the challenges. We've discussed those things, but for you, is part of the brotherhood of being in the military, being with your brothers, is that one of the things that helps you get through the difficulty of those deployments?
Well, that's all it is. War isn't like the movies. There's no background music playing. There's no trumpets blaring. I mean, there are people blasting music through their headphones. Some soldiers do that. But when you're out there for each other, because you realize, this is why day one of basic training in the Army, they take away your sense of individuality and they start teaching you the power of a team, because you can't win without each other. Everybody has a different job. Everybody has a different role, different weapon system or different task, whatever it may be. And it's important that everybody works together to get through that. I remember when we were crossing the berm into Iraq, our commander came over the horn and said, the only way back to the world is through that darkness, and we got to get through it together. And he was right. That was it. Everybody was going together. There's no way home except through that. And so we had to get through it together, and that's what it's all about. You help each other. Race, religion, all that stuff, it doesn't matter in the Army. You have your job. That's why we train so hard. Our senior NCOs would always keep blaring over the radio. When it all gets crazy, just do what we trained you. Just do what you were trained. And that's what you do. You stick to your training, and it works. So
everything you say, it's so fun because it echoes so much of what we've heard from so many other people on the show. And I think that really speaks to the spirit and the bond that you have, especially in the Army. Our friend Tom Georgie over here, he's a Silver Star recipient from the Vietnam War, and in the action that he was awarded the Silver Star for, he talked about, in that situation, it's all about instincts. You go back to your training and you just hope what you're doing is right, and it's kind of echoing what you said there. But I also wanted to ask you, for you, being in such difficult situations, being a leader of people in those situations, how do you train yourself to not only deal with the mayhem, but also know you've got people behind you who are counting on you? I'm sure that's not an easy thing by any means.
Well, it's all the leadership training. When I was in Iraq, I was a squad leader, and so you have to take care of your soldiers. That's what it's all about. You have to make sure you're constantly riding their asses about their weapons, their equipment. Weapon failure or equipment failure could get everybody killed. So you have to do your job as an NCO, but you have to take care of your soldiers. You have to understand they're afraid. You have to understand that they're confused. You have to make sure as a leader that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you're taking care of them. NCOs always say mission first, but troops always. So we take care of the men, and you got to lead them through it. It's when you go through your leadership training, it's make a decision. You just keep moving, make a decision. Freezing, you can't allow that. Even you see it with young officers sometimes there, and NCOs would have to run over there and say, LT or Captain, what are we doing? Make a decision right now. And you just keep driving forward, and that's what it's all about. You believe in the training, believe in each other, and get each other through. So
it's amazing. It's what we always really appreciate, the heartfelt insights. But you just mentioned Iraq, obviously in the news again so much. From you kind of now sitting back home and you go through your experiences, how do you view the situation that we see down there right now? Does it, is it unsettling to see that there's still so much turmoil there?
Is it unsettling? No, because I think the turmoil's always been there. Iraq is a very different world than it was when I was there. There's since the Iraq War of the 2000s, and since basically ISIS has been wiped out, most of the Iraqi leadership there is now very allied with America because we've given them their country back. But Iran has always been a player in that region. When we were there, Iranian militias and backed militias were killing American troops. Ironically, where this general just got killed, they were very, very good at setting up IEDs and killing. I think over 600 Americans were killed, and that was attributed to Iranian militias. And we would always wonder why nothing was being done about it. It was political. So you don't see a lot of crying by the military about this guy being killed.
No.
He was very good at what he did. And he was setting and getting ready, apparently, to do even more attacks. So there's no love lost, from my point of view, on his demise.
No. So. And I think any reasonable person, anyone who criticizes it, really just listen to the people who've served. That's all you need to know, is hear from them. One of the things I'll usually ask our guests is, about the transition from the military into civilian life. It's a different story for everyone. It's got different challenges for everyone. What was it like for you going from the military back into civilian life?
Well, the military, when you do your out briefing, you get about a 30-minute presentation from the VA, and you're not even listening because your family's sitting out in the parking lot and you want to get out of there. So you get your folder of all your benefits. You get these briefings from all these different people. You get out processed. You get your envelope that says, thanks for playing. And then you get sent on your way. And so what a lot of service members do now, what I've done for many years, is do a lot with Veterans Affairs. I think when you get out, you have a duty to keep giving back. And I learned that from the Vietnam veterans who raised me. Their motto at the Vietnam Veterans Association is never again will a veteran leave another behind, because of how they were treated when they came home. My father was a Vietnam veteran. I was raised by all his Vietnam veteran friends. So I grew up in that culture, that Vietnam veteran culture. And when I came back from Iraq, the first people standing there at the airport were Vietnam veterans. They said, we're going to welcome you home. And they said, remember that. They said, and so I've tried to pass that on with these next generations of veterans come back. I try and be there for them. Because one day they're going to be the old veterans. These Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, one day they're going to be the old guys. And whatever war comes down the future, I tell them, you better be there for those men and women who are coming home from there. Pass it down to the next generation. So I've tried to do that. A lot of veterans like to keep helping fellow veterans. The veteran transition issue in America is very big. We have problems with employment issues, which is a big issue with veterans. We have housing issues, which seemingly never go away. Training issues, retraining, how to train some veterans into new tasks. There's the severe issues of PTSD, and all of those. But there's so many nonprofit groups now that help veterans in so many ways, in wonderful ways. And I work with a group of them. I work with Rebuilding Warriors out of New Jersey, which provides service dogs to disabled veterans. That's led by Jeff and Nancy Mullins, and they do a wonderful job. I work with a group called Vet Rest, which is run by Colonel Rob Vici, who's a West Point grad. And he helps a lot of veterans who are down on their luck, whether they need help with car payments or housing payments, whatever it may be. And Project Help, run by Sandy Mitchell. She literally provides clothing and suits to veterans who want to go on job interviews and provides food to veterans' families. I work with different nonprofits in Patterson and whatnot who help disabled veterans find housing through the VASH program. These are disabled veterans who can't work. So it's very hard to find income, and so we try and find suitable housing for them so they don't end up homeless. So that's how we continue that idea of selfless service after you get out, is you continue to serve. You just do it differently. We're no longer carrying an M4, no longer driving tanks or in helicopters, but you can still serve those other veterans who need help. And so that's what a lot of folks do. I see it with the younger veterans and they love coming together. The millennial veterans, they're very communal. They love doing activities together, athletic events together. They're very close. I see a lot of these millennial veterans are very close, and they do all sorts of community events together. They even do park cleanups or athletic clubs, these type of things. And that's great. That's absolutely wonderful. That's going to help them through these issues, whether they have disabilities. With the beauty of modern medicine is it has saved so many lives. The bad part is there's a lot of veterans who have disabilities or missing limbs or that kind of thing that they now have to deal with the rest of their lives, and that affects their employment ability or those kind of things. So there's a lot of nonprofits out there. I would recommend every veteran find a nonprofit group that helps in some way, whether it's Hire Heroes USA, which will redo your resume for you for free, which is amazing. A lot of folks can't do that. There's a lot of folks out there that are willing to help. You just got to reach out.
You know, that's so heartening to hear, because truly, you know, I think if you hear that, it really emphasizes, and it's so true, why our veterans are our national treasures. Because even when you hang your uniform up, you're still always going out there, looking out for your fellow veterans. It never ends, that selfless commitment to service. And that's why it's so very special. You know, all the work that you're involved with is just incredible as well. And I'm sure for you, having all the experience you have and then being able to mentor people through that. And I really like what you said about the Vietnam veterans, because that's what we've talked about with so many. We've been lucky enough to have so many Vietnam vets on this program, always spearheaded by Tom Georgie. And, you know, that's one of the things that he's always emphasized is, you know, the way that they were treated, they were going to make sure that never happened again. And from the story, some of what you just told us, it really seems like that precedent has really hit home.
Yeah, it was interesting being raised by Vietnam veterans. I'll tell you that for sure. The Vietnam guys in the 1970s, they were all like my father was there, obviously, but they all became like my uncles. You know, and they all did different things. Some were business owners, some were blue-collar workers, whatnot. Some rode motorcycles. Like anybody else, they all did different things. But they all had that common bond. Some were Marines, some were Army, a couple sailors, but you couldn't tell when they were all hanging out together because they just had that bond, that they had that shared experience. And that rubbed off on me in the 80s when I joined the Army. You know, there were still some Vietnam veterans in the military when I was in the late 80s. My platoon sergeant was a Vietnam veteran, but he was very near retirement. In fact, I think he retired right after Desert Storm. So there were still a couple guys still in service when I joined. But then by the 90s, most of them had retired. And so, yeah, they taught me a lot growing up. So they imparted their great wisdom on me.
It's just, this conversation has been terrific today. I think what better way to end than to ask you, you know, when you look back and, you know, if you're sitting there at night and you want to think, you know, what does it mean to me to say I was an American soldier, I put on the uniform, I served my country for 30 plus years. What does, you know, that mean to you?
Well, it's become my identity. I think it comes down to the age-old statement: the honor is to serve. You know, that's what it's all about. Even in the military, some folks would complain. Soldiers always complain. If soldiers aren't complaining, there's something wrong. But I would say, you know, the honor is to serve. We serve America. America doesn't serve us. So whether you agree or disagree with something politically, we go forth and we serve. Just like you just saw last week, the President of the United States mobilized the whole brigade of the 82nd Airborne. In 48 hours, the whole brigade was sitting in Kuwait. Yeah, that's pretty that's a big logistical thing to
Absolutely.
move. And they're going off, and I felt a sense of pride because at one point in my life that was me. And I know what all those soldiers are thinking as they're getting on board those aircraft. You know what's going through their head. They don't show you on TV all the goodbyes that they just had to tell their wives and their children. You know, I got deployed on Christmas Eve night. So I was single at the time, so it wasn't so bad, but I remember, you know, the goodbyes of all the married soldiers kissing their wives and kids goodbye on Christmas Eve. Imagine that, because we landed on Iraq on Christmas morning. So, but they went and they served, and they're still sitting there now. I'm sure if nothing's going on, the president will bring them back at some point. But when I watch those news now, because I've went through it, I feel what's going on with them, what's going on in their heads.
It's just amazing. You are an amazing person. I absolutely appreciate your time today, giving us some of your stories and all of the knowledge you've acquired. You know, I feel like we could always get into so much more, so you're always welcome back on our program. Anything we can ever do to help with any of the organizations that you're involved in, more than happy to do so, but I really appreciate your time today. What a way to start off the first show of 2020.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, my friend.